Vivian sent more than a dozen photos in our 3-person sister group with me and Grace. Along with 4 words, "A pleasant surprise." I was taken aback at first when I realized that the half-naked man in the photos was my husband. Yehuda! I exploded. What the hell kind of pleasant surprise is this? The woman in the photos was clearly Yehuda's persistent ex-girlfriend. Ophelia. Did Yehuda rekindle his old feelings? Since when? Or had they never really broken up? How long had this been going on? Were they together now? My mind was in a complete mess. Vivian said. Malcolm has someone outside. I hired someone to follow him. And finding out about Yehuda was an unexpected bonus. Malcolm is Vivian's husband. Yes. We were both cheated on and in such a gathered-together-like situation. I checked the original version of each photo and then saved them. Vivian, Henline put out a low sigh. Grace. And I didn't know each other originally. We became friends gradually because of our husband's business and personal relationships. Yehuda is 7 years older than me. We dated, got married, and had a daughter. He started his own business. And I quit my job to be a housewife. Yehuda is the warm-hearted and cautious type. He treated me even better after marriage than before. I had once thought that his kindness to me seemed a bit deliberate, and there were many quirks in our life that I couldn't understand. But I was so carried away by happiness before that I dismissed these thoughts one by one. Now, with irrefutable evidence in front of me, all those doubts finally found their explanations. For example, last year, for a long time, the clothes he changed after coming back from business trips all had the scent of lavender, while the laundry detergent we bought at home had a green tangerine fragrance. His explanation was that it was the hotel's laundry detergent. For different hotels using the same laundry detergent. Such a miraculous coincidence. And I actually believed it at that time. Another example was that every time he came back from a business trip, his phone would be on mute. Several times. He would calmly hang up the phone when it rang. And then he would surely go out for a cigarette. Now that I think about it, he wasn't going out to smoke at all. He was clearly avoiding me to make a call back. There were many such small things. Now, when I think about them one by one, there were so many loopholes. Yet I made excuses for him. I was really stupid. What made me the angriest was that this woman was actually Ophelia. Ophelia was Yehuda's first love. I had met her twice. The first time was after we got engaged. We went to Yemen together. One day, Yehuda went to meet a client alone. And I wandered around Lyon by myself. In the evening, as if by fate, I saw the two of them having dinner through the glass window. I didn't think much of it at that time. After I pushed the door open and entered, Yehuda was just a bit startled. And then he introduced Ophelia very generously. Ophelia was just like her name. She was not tall, had very fair skin. Her eyebrows were sparse and soft. Her temperament was hazy like the moon. And when she smiled, she looked quiet and harmless. But a woman's intuition is accurate. The moment our eyes met, I knew that this woman was probably more than just a classmate. The dinner that day wasn't too awkward. We talked about the past and complimented each other on our current situations. Even on the way back to the hotel, he frankly admitted that Ophelia was his ex-girlfriend. I wasn't angry. Instead, I thought she was straightforward. Everyone has an ex, right? But at this moment, once the doubts started, they grew crazily. I remembered many details. For example, Yehuda was the one who decided to go to Yemen. And Ophelia had been living in Lyon for 2 years at that time. And was he really going to meet a client that day? Was their meeting really just a coincidence? Ophelia's makeup was very light that day. But it was obvious that she had put a lot of effort into it. Would a woman spend so much time and effort putting on a scheming makeup just to go shopping alone? So, had they been in touch since then? Or had they never broken off contact? The second time I saw her was last year. One day, our daughter Emma suddenly had a high fever and was taken to the hospital. When we passed the obstetrics and gynecology department, I saw her sitting on a bench with a desolate look in the distance. A slightly chubby man in his 40s was accompanying her. That night, when I talked to Yehuda on the phone during his business trip, I casually mentioned this. Yehuda didn't seem concerned and quickly changed the topic. Now that I think about it, he was clearly trying to clear himself of suspicion. I took a moment to calm down and tried to find more clues from the photos. The photos were taken on a yacht. Yehuda was wearing swimming trunks with his upper body bare, and Ophelia was wearing a floral halter dress. The two were sticking close together, looking very intimate. I suppressed the churning emotions in my heart, put on a cold face, and asked, "When were these taken?" "Just now. A few hours ago." After Vivian said that, she threw out a few more photos. On the same yacht, Vivian's husband, Malcolm, was holding another woman with a hot figure, and behind them, Ophelia and Yehuda were in a different intimate pose. And standing aside, dressed appropriately but clearly out of place in the atmosphere, was Grace's husband, Max. Yehuda went on this trip with Malcolm and Max. At that time, they even took a photo of the three of them having a meal to reassure me. What good brothers they were, covering for each other so well. I remember that every time we had a video call, Malcolm would vow in the background, "Sister-in-law, don't worry. I'll keep an eye on him for you." After hanging up the phone each time, they must have been laughing out loud, right? Laughing at how stupid women were. Laughing at how they could manipulate stupid women at will. The three of them often traveled together and played ball together every Saturday. Now that I think about it, who knows what they were up to? They were all birds of a feather. More than the infidelity, the tacit and blatant mutual cover-up among the three men made me even more disgusted. The three of us met. Grace, having fulfilled my obsession. "Aren't you worried about Max?" Vivian frowned and looked at Grace. From just now until now, even when Vivian kept showing the photos, Grace didn't seem surprised. I suddenly had an idea. "Grace, do you know about this?" Vivian looked incredulous. But Grace slowly put down the cup in her hand. "Yes, I know everything." My head went blank. Vivian pointed at her and said, "You've known for a long time? Then why didn't you tell me? Have you been watching us as a joke all this time?" "Grace, is this what you call being good sisters and good friends?" Grace lowered her eyes and said to me, "Jacqueline, would you be happy if you knew?" I was stunned. Grace continued, "Hiding it was wrong. But telling you and watching your lives fall apart. Would that be right?" I've been hesitating. In fact, when Vivian took out the photos just now, I felt a sense of relief. "Vivian, I'm sorry. In the end, I made you the bad guy." Vivian's eyes immediately turned red. I reached out and squeezed her hand. I didn't know what to do, but I wasn't doing nothing. After saying that, she took out 2 envelopes from her bag behind her and put them on the table. "We're all smart people. You don't need me to tell you what to do and how to do it, but whether you take this step or not depends on you." Vivian didn't hesitate to pick up the envelope and open it. Seeing that I didn't move, she said, "Jacqueline, the evidence is overwhelming. What are you still hesitating about?" I still didn't move. You may blame me for hesitating. But how could I not hesitate? If I were alone, I could charge through any difficulties. But now, I have my parents to consider. And I have a beloved daughter. Grace took a look first and then calmly asked Vivian, "Vivian, what are you going to do?" "What else can I do? Divorce." "And after the divorce?" "If I remember correctly, the company is under Malcolm's name. The final result might be that you leave with a sum of money. Are you willing?" Vivian was stunned. Vivian was once a rich man's daughter. She fell out with her family for love and started a business with Malcolm. A poor guy. Back then, everyone praised their fairy-like love. Everyone said she was lucky to have chosen Malcolm. A potential stock. But no one knew how much hardship she had endured. Finally, cutting fulfilled my sigh. After all the hard work, Malcolm, this jerk, actually started fooling around outside. Malcolm had consumed her youth and trust. Now that he was successful, if she made a scene, she might really just leave with some money, while Malcolm could still have a good time after the divorce. "Why?" Vivian gradually calmed down. Although she didn't say anything, it seemed that she had changed her mind. Grace then looked at me. "Jacqueline, I won't beat around the bush with you. If you choose to divorce and make a scene, you might just be playing into some people's hands. Moreover, since you don't have a job, the possibility of the child being awarded to you is very low. My heart was hit hard. The three of us talked until very late that day. After initially formulating a plan, I secretly made up my mind, Yehuda must pay the price for his deception. In the evening, after settling my daughter, I dialed Yehuda's video call. As expected, he didn't answer. About half an hour later, he called back. I was taking a shower just now and didn't hear it. He sounded a bit tired on the phone, and his voice was lowered. I said, "The signal isn't very good. Why don't you go to the window and try?" Yehuda was startled, then subconsciously looked to the right and said, "The signal in this hotel really isn't good. It's the same everywhere. How about you wait for a while? I'll put on some clothes and call you back outside." Huh. It seems Ophelia was right beside him. "No need. It's nothing important. When you come back and pass by the airport, buy me a few dresses. I'll send you the photos later." After perfunctorily saying a few words and hanging up the phone, I lay in bed all night without sleep. I finally fell asleep in a daze in the early morning. But I had a dream that when Yehuda was on a video call with me, Ophelia was standing opposite him, even flirting with him in a coquettish way. 2 days later, Yehuda came back. Besides the things on the list, he also bought me a bunch of cosmetics, which showed how guilty he was. And I started the first step of my plan. The information Grace gave me was very detailed. Ophelia came back 2 years ago. The two of them really had a substantial relationship starting 2 years ago. At that time, I was pregnant. 2 years ago, Ophelia's husband's business failed and Ophelia quickly divorced him. Yehuda settled her in Donhu community and they were like a couple. Last year, Ophelia had an accidental miscarriage. The person who accompanied her to the hospital was her brother. It was obvious whose child it was. Remembering the scene when I saw her in the hospital's obstetrics and gynecology department, I couldn't help clenching my teeth. So, back then, I had been very close to the cruel truth. I had to meet her. I rarely buy expensive clothes. But this time, I asked Yehuda to bring back 3 dresses from the airport, each one more expensive than the last. The one I'm wearing today is a new CHANEL style. I have to say, expensive things have their reasons. It looks really good on me. I gave the nanny a day off and drove to the Sam's Club next to Donhu community. After entering for about 15 minutes, I saw Ophelia in the fresh food section. I was lucky. After casually throwing some things into the cart, I put on a perfect smile and walked towards her. Yes, this was the first step of my plan. You can't fight a battle without preparation. If you want to win, you have to understand your enemy. Only by fully grasping the opponent's weaknesses can you build up your strength and strike a decisive blow. This sentence was told to me by Yehuda when I was being ostracized in the company back then. I benefited a great deal from it back then. Now, I'm also ready to accept his teaching with an open mind and carry it forward. "Ophelia?" Ophelia turned around and was startled when she saw it was me. "Jacqueline?" After all these years, she can still accurately call out the name of her ex-boyfriend's wife, whom she's only met once. If she really has such a good memory, it's a pity she didn't go to a prestigious school. I smiled and said, "It really is you. It's been so many years. When did you come back? Do you live nearby?" Ophelia paused and said, "I've been back for a while." I took out my phone and sent a message to Yehuda while saying, "I must tell Yehuda right away. We definitely have to get together later. When we went to Yunnan for a trip before, the travel guide you gave us was a huge help. This time, we must invite you to dinner." My actions were naturally to dispel her suspicions. During this brief exchange, she had already sized up my outfit and the jealousy in her eyes was almost uncontrollable. I'm only 25. 6 years younger than her. The look I'm going for today is more than enough to outshine a plain Jane like her. The only thing lacking might be that so-called first love. Ophelia seemed to think of something. Let out a slight sigh of relief. Her expression returned to normal. And her right hand subconsciously gently rested on her abdomen as she said, "No need. I didn't really do much to help." When I saw this, my heart skipped a beat. As someone who's been through it, I knew exactly what was going on. "Are you pregnant?" Congratulations. How many months along are you? You seem to have just gotten married when we went to Yunnan last time. After all these years. Are you already having a second child? I silently clenched my fists. It's not good for you to carry so many things while pregnant. Your husband is really something. If Yehuda dared to treat me like this, I'd make him pay. Fortunately, I ran into you. Come on. Let me take you back. Ophelia's face was pale and she didn't say anything. Just when I thought she was going to refuse, I heard her say, "Okay. Then I'll have to trouble you." Her tone was unhurried, but I could detect a bit of temper in it. I want you to have some spirit and pursuits. Otherwise, this act of mine would be in vain. On the way to take Ophelia back, I received a call from Yehuda. His voice was very low, and he sounded extremely nervous. Ophelia, on the other hand, showed no abnormal expression. She was much calmer than Yehuda. Donghu community is near the suburbs. Although the housing price is not high, it has a beautiful view and is suitable for living. Ophelia lies in a high-rise building by the lake. The house is only over 70 square meters. But it has everything needed and is decorated with great creativity. This house is under Malcolm's name and is lent to Yehuda for use. There should be many such transactions between them. The information Grace gave me isn't complete. I wonder what Vivian thought when she saw the housing information. Traces of their life together can be seen everywhere in the room. Even the toothbrush and toothpaste are in the style and brand that Yehuda likes. Not surprisingly, I saw lavender-scented laundry detergent on the shelf. So, this is where Yehuda has been going on his business trips. I heard it's not easy to buy a house in this community. Some people queued for 3 days when the housing numbers were released. It seems your husband has some connections. Ophelia smiled slightly, showing a coquettish look of a little woman. He doesn't have any connections. Maybe, Banata wo sai. As you said, he secretly queued for 3 days for me. Hey, having so my obsession. She's getting carried away with a little praise. I replied. It seems you two are very affectionate. Yes, Pethus, he really loves me. Ophelia said this unhurriedly, with a meaningful smile. I suppressed the anger in my heart and replied. People who get married are serious. Naturally, they hold each other dear. No matter how affectionate you are, you're still a despicable person who can't see the light. Ophelia's eyes flickered and her gaze shifted elsewhere. I loosened my fist and asked again. Why don't I see any photos of you two? Come to think of it, I haven't met your husband yet. She turned her back to pour tea, and I couldn't see her expression clearly. Her voice was a bit hoarse as she said. He doesn't like taking pictures. That's a pity. Sister Ophelia, you're so beautiful. You must look great in photos. Your husband must often show you off to others. Right? Yehuda used to be so childish. He liked to show off our photos everywhere. But now he's changed. I frowned and said. Oh? Ophelia looked up. I smiled. Now he's changed to showing off our daughter. I lowered my eyes and glanced at her belly. A child should live in the sunshine, being showered with love, not in a gutter, and definitely not be used as a dirty bargaining chip. Ophelia lowered her eyes to hide her emotions and handed me the teacup. Well, white tea. Your taste is quite similar to Yehuda's. I smiled. Ophelia didn't say anything. After a while, she actually said, come to think of it. He started drinking white tea under my influence. I was taken aback. Then laughed loudly. I almost forgot. You two have a past. I'm not that petty. Everyone knows that a good horse doesn't eat back grass. Anybody with sense understands this. Those who don't understand aren't even worthy of being called people. Ophelia was obviously extremely angry and got up to go to the bathroom. The moment she closed the door, the smile on my face completely disappeared. I have parents above me and a daughter. But I have to love myself first to be worthy of loving my daughter. And my parents surely wouldn't want their daughter to endure humiliation and be unhappy all her life. When she came out of the bathroom, I had finished what I needed to do and got up to leave. As soon as I left, she threw the fruit basket I gave her into the trash can. I saw all this from the surveillance. Yes, while she was in the bathroom, I connected to her home WFV and surveillance. Coincidentally, having fulfilled my obsession. The surveillance Yehuda installed for Ophelia is the same as the one at my home. The Wi-Fi password and the surveillance setting password are both Ophelia's birthday. That night, Yehuda didn't come back again because of overtime. When he came back the next day, his face was dark and blue, and the signs of staying up all night under his eyes were obvious. It seemed they had a fight. After I brought the breakfast to the table, he started gobbling it up. I easily picked up my phone and said, "Didn't Xiao Wang order you dinner for overtime?" "No way. I have to call him and tell him off." Yehuda choked in a hurry while eating. It took him a long time to cough and then said in an embarrassed way, "No. It has nothing to do with him. I was just too busy and forgot to eat." I handed him a glass of water. "All right. I guess Xiao Wang wouldn't be so careless." "Don't worry. I won't call him. I'm going to call Ophelia." Yehuda completely lost his appetite for food and tried to remain calm. You, what do you want to call her for?" I said. "Didn't I tell you I met her yesterday? After all, she's your classmate and helped us a few years ago. I promised to invite her to dinner yesterday." Oh, Yehuda drank a few sips of water, and his expression finally eased. "If you hadn't said it, I would have forgotten." "All right. You decide." A few seconds later, he frowned slightly and said, "Maybe you should call her later. She might not be up yet." Afraid that I would wake her up. "What time is it already?" "It's not like you. Staying up all night for overtime." I pressed the call button. Yehuda lowered his head and didn't speak. Nor did he stop me again. It rang for a long time before the other side answered. Ophelia's tone was sleepy and a bit annoyed at being woken up. But as soon as she recognized it was me, she immediately became alert. I turned my back and while washing the dishes, I casually invited her to dinner in a normal tone. She refused at first, but after I provoked her a couple of times without showing it, she finally agreed. When I hung up the phone and turned around, I found that Yehuda had already gone back to the room at some point, leaving only half-eaten breakfast on the table. I put away the smile on my face, wiped my hands, and then dialed Vivian's phone number. "Vivian. It's the second step. Do me a favor." At 740p. I walked into the restaurant arm in arm with Yehuda. As soon as we entered, we saw Ophelia. As usual, she was wearing a nude-colored long dress. From a distance, she looked as plain as a chrysanthemum. But up close, her makeup was a bit thick and the dark circles under her eyes were obvious. Today, I was wearing the ice blue gradient long dress among the three, along with a set of gem jewelry in the same color system, exuding an air of noble elegance. She sized me up quickly from head to toe, and then her eyes darkened and slightly. The little white chrysanthemum was no match for the wealthy flower of the world, as expected, but I couldn't feel happy. During the day today, I watched the surveillance and finally knew the reason why Ophelia endured my provocation. The most important project in Yehuda's hands, which has been in the works for 2 years, is about to be finalized. Once successful, he will achieve great success, fame, and fortune. He might even be able to compete for the title of the local richest man. He gave up his official career because of this project, so its importance is self-evident. At this time, what he fears most is probably any variable that could affect the progress of the project. After taking our seats, I pretended to be surprised. "Ophelia, where's your husband? He has something urgent to attend to today and can't get away." "Your husband is really something. You're still pregnant. How could he let you come out alone?" "If I had known, I would have asked Yehuda to pick you up." I smiled. The two of them exchanged a quick glance. Ophelia's thick foundation made her look a bit pale. "It's okay. The baby is very well behaved and doesn't cause trouble," I said. "Still, you should be careful. When I was pregnant, Yehuda never left my side. He brought me food and drinks right to me. In the end, his catchphrase became, 'Let me do it.' I remember once when I got up at night, he suddenly sat up, half asleep, and asked, 'Where are you going?' I said I was going to the bathroom. Guess what he said? He said, Let me do it. Isn't it funny? I laughed so hard that I could barely straighten up. And there were clearly some tears in the corners of my eyes. But Yehuda was looking at Ophelia, who was trying hard to hold back, with a worried expression, and didn't notice. Ophelia echoed, "You two seem very affectionate." I continued, "In fact, for a long time after I married him, I was very confused. He was my first love, and I got married right after graduation. How could I be sure that he was the right person for me for life? What if he betrayed me?" But later, when I almost burned down the kitchen console, and he was worried about whether I was scared. When I had a temper tantrum during pregnancy, and he tried his best to coax me. When I gave birth to the baby and he came to hold me and cry the first moment. I was sure that he was the right person. As long as he doesn't betray me, I'll be good to him for life. But in the end, he still betrayed me. Yehuda seemed to be touched by my words. He tried to hold my hand under the table. I raised my hand to pretend to move the tableware and he stopped. Then he tried to change the subject. "Those are all things from the past. Let's not talk about them. Let's talk about. What about now?" I suddenly raised my head and asked half jokingly. "Who do you love now? Is it her?" Yehuda was stunned. As if he was also stumped by this question. "Well, that's enough." This 1 second hesitation was enough. I withdrew my gaze, sensing something was wrong. Yehuda was about to say something to salvage the situation when a piercing fire alarm rang out. The restaurant erupted in chaos. And everyone started running outside. I wiped my mouth. Calmly got up. But before I could take a step, someone suddenly grabbed my arm. I turned my head and was shocked to find it was Yehuda. He looked panicked. Glancing in the direction of the exit, he grabbed me and started running outside without a word. Only after we got out of the restaurant did he let go of my arm and ask, "Did anyone step on you?" I stared at him in shock, as if remembering something. Yehuda seemed to want to turn back and run inside, but before he could move, he saw Ophelia, who had a calm face, walking out of the restaurant last. I asked Vivian to arrange the incident in the restaurant. It was a gamble, aiming to make myself give up completely. With that 1 second hesitation of his, I knew I had lost. But I never expected that this scumbag was so skilled at maintaining a balance between women. He pulled me away, and then went on a business trip for 3 days, staying with Ophelia to comfort her. After much thought, I decided to carry out the final plan half a month later. Speaking of Vivian, after she helped me that day, she came to me and asked me to go to the company to help her check the accounts. I forgot to mention that I majored in finance. Things were going smoothly for Vivian. Malcolm was quite scheming. After years of preparation, he had set up a situation where he could embezzle money and leave at any time. After careful consideration, the first thing Vivian did was to go home and have a good cry in front of her parents. Vivian's parents had been at odds with her because they disliked Malcolm. Now, with solid evidence and their daughter being wronged, they were wish one could at once to get rid of him immediately. Especially Vivian's brother, Caleb, almost went to fight Malcolm with a knife. Fortunately, hadn't fulfilledly, she managed to calm them down. Vivian's family group was engaged in the real estate business. Although they had been hit hard in recent years, a lean camel is still bigger than a horse. Although they were not doing well in terms of making money, their network of connections was still there. Caleb set a trap for Malcolm, and lured by a large sum of money. Malcolm jumped in without hesitation. Malcolm was happily daydreaming about making a fortune. But the company on the other side started to delay indefinitely. Malcolm struggled for a while, trying to cover one debt with another. But the company's capital chain still had problems. The loan interest soared, and Malcolm was in a dilemma. Seeing that the company was about to go bankrupt, he shamelessly begged Vivian to ask her parents to lend him money for a turnaround. Vivian went, pretending to be extremely wronged, and then came back and told him her parents' conditions. They could help, but only their daughter. Malcolm made up his mind and transferred the company's equity to Vivian's name. As soon as Vivian got control, she immediately started checking the accounts. I followed some clues and uncovered a lot of other things, which also involved Yehuda and Max. Over the years, The three of them had really done a lot of dirty deeds. It was a week later when everything was done. If Vivian were to take action at this time, she could get at least half of the company, or even leave Malcolm with an empty shell. However, she had another trick up her sleeve. The day I entered my house, I received a message from Vivian in the group, saying that the company had been summoned for a meeting. And as the financial director, I had to go to the symposium with Malcolm the next day. I frowned. Some things were leverage when kept in hand. But once they were exposed, no one could get away unscathed, especially since Vivian was the actual person in charge of the company now. Just as I was guessing if someone had tipped off, I received a call from Vivian. Vivian, what's going on? Did someone leak the information? I did. Do you think Malcolm will still be in the mood to go to the club tonight? I was stunned again. And then I got anxious. Are you crazy? What good will it do to send him in now? He might turn on you and get you in trouble. I am crazy. The company is in such a mess. And he still goes to the club twice a week without fail. He's really obsessed with women. It's a pity he didn't develop this into a career. I was speechless for a moment. And then I tried to comfort her. I know you're upset. I am too. Yehuda has been on a business trip for many days. Ophelia threatened Yehuda with her unstable pregnancy. And Yehuda was really busy with a project that was almost completed. So, he simply stayed there, thinking it was a win-win situation. Only, he never thought about me and our daughter. But Vivian, acting impulsively won't solve the problem now. Think about your brother and your parents. They were also involved in setting up this game. Don't be impulsive. The other side was quiet for a few seconds. When she spoke again, her voice was a bit hoarse with sobs. Don't worry. I'm not that stupid. Tomorrow is just a pretense. They're actors I hired. You just need to make him realize the seriousness of the situation. I felt relieved. Vivian didn't say anything on the other side. After a while, she hung up the phone. I knew she was crying. As long as you've truly loved, you'll understand that to dig out a cancer, you're bound to experience excruciating pain. I wasn't quite sure what Vivian's purpose was. But the next day's meeting really seemed genuine. There was a row of men in black suits on the other side. They were all like those in the movies, with sharp eyes and unkind words. Especially a beautiful woman with glasses who hit the nail on the head every time. She really scared Malcolm. If I hadn't known in advance that this was arranged by Vivian, I would have been terrified too. After dealing with these people, Malcolm was sweating all over and slumped in his chair, not moving for a long time. The effect was great. I guess he wouldn't have any wild thoughts for the time being. It was Saturday again, and the three of us got together once more. Without saying a word, Vivian slapped a divorce certificate in front of us. I was shocked. Is this real or fake? Vivian, it's real. But Malcolm thinks it's fake. Grace, what do you mean? Vivian, he was really scared that day. He really thought someone had something on him. So he went to my brother with a shameless face. My brother said he would help him solve the problem if he divorced. So, he really came back and begged me, saying it was a fake divorce and we'd remarry after things calmed down. It's really laughable. Although she said this, there was only coldness in Vivian's eyes. I went to get the certificate with him that day. But whether it's a real divorce or a fake one, it's not up to him. I was stunned. And Grace was also quite surprised. What about the property? He was in a hurry to divorce. So he gave me whatever I wanted. He transferred the company's equity very readily. Grace and I couldn't help but sigh. It was as if Malcolm had left the marriage with nothing. Unexpectedly. By accident. Malcolm was the first one to be dealt with. I said again, if you don't remarry, won't he make trouble? Vivian put down her coffee, looked at me, and said, so, I need your help later. I was taken aback. How can I help? Vivian let out a low sigh. However, kept me in suspense and smiled. I haven't congratulated Yehuda yet on finally getting what he wants. I heard that the project review has been completed. If nothing unexpected happens, it will be approved next week. Right? I nodded. Vivian smiled and said, if I'm not wrong, there are other surprises waiting for him at the celebration banquet, right? I didn't intend to hide it. There really are. Vivian smiled. If you don't mind, I can make this surprise even bigger. I paused. And then I suddenly understood. My blood immediately boiled with excitement. Grace picked up her black tea and took a sip, smiling slightly. It seems there will be a series of good shows next week. On Wednesday morning, Yehuda got up early, dressed smartly, and drove to the signing venue full of energy. As soon as he left, Vivian and Grace drove over to pick me up. I changed into a tracksuit, tied my hair up high, grabbed a hardhell handbag, put on black sunglasses like them, and we set off. The car stopped at Donghu Community. Vivian and Grace each took a brick-like crocodile bag and rushed towards the high-rise building. I easily dialed Yehuda's phone in the car. Yehuda said in an unfriendly tone, "Jacqueline, I'm in the middle of signing a contract. This project is very important. Whatever it is, let's talk about it when we get back." I inspected my nails, looking calm but speaking in a panicked voice. "Yehuda, it's bad." Vivian was checking the properties under Malcolm's name and found that he has a mistress outside. Now she's gone to Donghu Community. The two of them are going up with sticks to beat people. I'm afraid there will be a murder. You should call Malcolm right away. There was a silence on the other side. After a moment, his voice rose a few degrees. "You stop them quickly. Stop them at all costs. I'm coming over now." I hung up the phone and slowly went upstairs. As soon as the elevator door on the 20th floor opened, I heard Ophelia's heartburning cries and Vivian's scolding and slapping sounds. "You really got the wrong person. I don't know Malcolm." "No, please." Ophelia's cries were heartbreaking. I just stepped out of the elevator and saw the scene in chaos. Ophelia was kneeling on the ground in her pajamas, with her hair disheveled. Vivian was bending over, pulling her hair with her left hand and slapping her with her right hand. The slaps were getting louder and louder. There were also many people watching and whispering. The scene was horrible. I walked over and pretended to recognize her only then. "Ophelia?" Vivian slapped a few more times before stopping. Ophelia looked up with red cheeks and blood at the corner of her mouth. When she saw me, her eyes wide and in shock, and then she crawled to my feet as if seeing a savior. "Jacqueline, please tell her. I really don't know her husband. I didn't do anything. I'm begging you." I glanced at Vivian and found that she was comfortably stretching her wrists, indicating that she had enjoyed the slapping. I said, "This house is indeed under Malcolm's name. Didn't you say your husband paid for 3 days to buy it?" Ophelia shook her head, showing some sense for once. No, I rented this house. I really don't know her husband." Vivian glared at her. "Rented? Don't you even find out what my family does? Do we need to rent out houses to make money? Tell me quickly. Where is that bastard Malcolm now?" At this time, Grace came out of the room, holding a bunch of receipts, credit cards, and a wallet. Ophelia became even more panicked when she saw this. "What are you doing? You have no right to take my things." Grace put the things in a bag and said leisurely, "Don't worry. We won't take them. We'll hand them over to the police later to see if you're a tenant or an illegal occupant." Ophelia was trembling all over. I slightly frowned and stepped back to avoid her hand, then squatted down and said, "Don't be afraid. Just explain things clearly when the police come. How about calling your husband back?" Ophelia immediately shut up and lay on the ground, sobbing softly. I let out a sigh of relief and took the things Grace handed me. Just then, when sorry. The elevator door rang, and Yehuda's panicked face appeared in front of everyone, followed by Malcolm, who was disheveled and obviously sleep-deprived. "Jacqueline, are you okay?" Yehuda looked at the bag in my hand and asked tentatively. I looked at him with a dark face and raised my hand. "Look at what you've done." Yehuda's face turned pale. My hand, however, turned towards Malcolm. "Malcolm? Why is Ophelia in your house?" Malcolm was dumbfounded and looked at Yehuda, taking the opportunity. Vivian rushed forward and slapped Malcolm's face left and right until his face was swollen. Ophelia gritted her teeth and suddenly said, "I rented the house. I've never seen this gentleman." Yehuda was smart and immediately figured it out. He stepped forward and pulled Vivian away. Stop hitting. It's all a misunderstanding. Malcolm's eyes were filled with stars. And he spat out a mouthful of blood. Vivian pointed at Yehuda. Fine. You say it was rented. Then who did you give the rent to? When did you pay? Malcolm was beaten silly. He wanted to curse at Yehuda when he looked at him. But Yehuda preempted him. I paid in cash. I remember you mentioned to me before about saving money from renting out the house to buy a wedding anniversary gift for Vivian. Right? And he went over and patted Malcolm on the shoulder. Brother. These are all small matters. When the project in my hand is successful, you can buy whatever you want to make it up to Vivian. The implication was that as long as he admitted it, he would surely get a share in the future project. Malcolm frowned and hesitated for a few seconds. Yes. Yehuda let out an almost imperceptible sigh of relief. But Vivian pointed at Yehuda's nose. You say it's so. And it's so? You men are all in cahoots. I've seen plenty of this kind of thing. Malcolm, you wait for me. After saying that, she dragged Grace away. I frowned and stepped forward. Yehuda, did you know about this before? Yehuda naturally denied it. I nodded, indicating that I believed him. Then I handed the bag back to Yehuda. It seems to be a misunderstanding. Go and sign the contract. Isn't it very important? I'll also go and persuade Vivian. After I got off the elevator, I saw Vivian and Grace waiting for me. The grievances in my heart suddenly burst like a river. I hugged them and cried for a long time. Yehuda was late that day. The other party was very unhappy. And he had to increase the conditions on the spot before the contract was successfully signed. Malcolm took the blame for the Ophelia incident. Vivian just took this as an opportunity and threw the records of his visits to the club in his face. The two completely broke up. Malcolm, having given up all hope, actually said to Vivian, go and ask around. Which man in the world doesn't fool around? I'm not having an affair in a serious way. Is it really such a big deal? Then he was beaten up by Caleb. After that, Malcolm completely gave up the last bit of his shares. Malcolm had to swallow his bitterness. He could only pin all his hopes on Yehuda's project, expecting to make a comeback. On Friday, I started dressing up early and put on the last black and gold evening dress. The project was initially successful, and Yehuda's name quickly spread throughout Shenyang. He not only received an invitation from the TV station, but also awards like Outstanding Entrepreneur, came one after another. So, there were a lot of people at the banquet, including members of the project team, relatives and friends. His friends from various circles, both old and new, classmates who came uninvited, and many prominent figures. Even a lot of media reporters. Ophelia actually came too. I smiled politely at her, then sat down next to her with the baby in my arms. Sister Ophelia, is your injury better? I believe you and Malcolm are innocent, but Vivian has been busy with other things these days. When she's free, I'll definitely persuade her to apologize to you. The injuries on her face hadn't healed yet. There were several ugly red marks under the delicate powder. She still came with such a face, which showed that she took herself seriously. No need. Today is Yehuda's big day. I must come to congratulate him. Her tone was indifferent. When she looked at me, she no longer had the previous caution, and there was even a bit of arrogance in her eyes. TSK, it seems Yehuda has given her some reassurance. I smiled. Yes. His project has finally succeeded, but the more successful he is, the more cautious he should be. Look over there. I casually pointed to the crowd where Yehuda was. The few on the left are business authorities invited from Shanghai, and on the right are several well-known media. So many people are watching him. If he is even the slightest handle, it's really over. With fame and success, and rising prestige, it's probably even harder for Yehuda to give her what she wants. This fool. I don't know what she's still hoping for. Ophelia stared blankly in the direction I pointed. Her mind seemed to haven't reacted yet. At this time, Yehuda happened to turn around and waved to me to come over. I nodded to him, then covered Emma's ears, turned my head, and said to the stunned Ophelia word by word with a smile, if anyone wants to take something from me, it can only be what I don't want. Do you understand? Bitch? in Ophelia's flustered and astonished gaze. I gracefully stood up with my daughter in my arms and walked towards Yehuda with a smile. After some greetings, I whispered, "Emma is sleepy. I'll take her back first. Oh, by the way, Sister Ophelia seemed to have something to say to you just now. Do you want to go over and have a look?" Yehuda glanced at her in disgust. "What's she doing here causing trouble at this kind of occasion?" "We'll talk about it later." Ophelia's face darkened instantly. The music and applause sounded on the scene. Yehuda took the microphone and went on stage. I carried the baby around to the backstage, and Grace and Vivian came towards me. One took the sleeping Emma, and the other took the bag in my hand. Grace asked, "Aren't you going to watch?" I looked back at his figure projected on the curtain by the laser light. "It's a mess. I don't think I'll watch." Vivian pouted disappointed lie. I was really looking forward to it. Grace said, "If you're not afraid of being photographed and interviewed, you can wait." Vivian quickly shook her head. "Then forget it. I can watch the news later." "But who was that handsome guy who greeted you just now? Introduce him?" "President Vivian. Please pay attention to your status." "I'm divorced." "What's wrong with asking?" The next day, I woke up in the villa. Outside the window there were beautiful mountains, clear waters, and the chirping of insects. Just as I stretched, Vivian rushed in with a cup of coffee looking excited. "Hurry up. Big news. I've been holding it in just for you." The video started from when Yehuda went on stage. After an inspiring speech, images appeared on the big screen behind him, but the content shocked everyone. First, there was a passionate kiss, and then Yehuda's voice came. "Ophelia, don't worry. When the project is successful, I'll divorce immediately. And we'll go to the Isle and you mentioned for our honeymoon." The sharp-eyed reporters immediately locked onto Ophelia, who had a pale face in the audience. By the time Ophelia remembered to cover her face, it was too late. Many reporters swarmed towards her. Then the screen changed to an audio of Yehuda's complaints, that President Ma is such a lecher. One wasn't enough, so I had to order two for him before he would sign for me. It's really disgusting. The reporter's camera focused on President Ma, whose face turned ashen, and his wife beside him, who yanked off his wig. "President Lee took so much money from me, and yet he still dared to mess things up like this. When the project is taken down in the future, he'll see what's coming to him." The camera turned to President Lee, who was staring at the camera in shock. In the chaotic scene, the reporters' cameras were calm and busy. Yehuda was panicked. He ordered someone to turn off the video but found that the switch didn't work. In the end, Yehuda, like a clown, tried to jump up and smash the screen but fell flat on the ground. Immediately, the screen played the audio of Ophelia talking on the phone alone. "Brother, when his project is successful, I'll go to his place with a big belly. As long as he still wants to get by, he has to give me a proper status. When we get married, it'll be easy to give you a hand. Don't worry about that." Over the years, I've secretly taken pictures and kept evidence of his private deals. If he still dares to drag me along, I'll report him. Then no one will have a good time. Every word was hardered in. Yehuda, who was trying to get up, froze and sat on the ground without getting up again. After that, it was the reporters reporting various transactions and anonymous reports. The evidence was conclusive. The amount of money was huge, and the inside story was astonishing. I turned off the PAD, but Vivian pouted. "I haven't finished watching yet. I'm telling you, the most exciting part is yet to come." I scared Malcolm a bit. And that unfaithful coward, in order to get a lighter sentence, turned around and reported Yehuda. Right after this farce ended, the procuratority came to arrest him. It made me laugh so hard. "Don't worry. He's doomed. He'll be in prison for a long time." I didn't say anything. Vivian put down the tablet and said again, "Ophelia had a miscarriage. Now her photos are all over the internet, and everyone is condemning her. It's really retribution." I let out a long sigh of relief. When I saw Yehuda again, he had handcuffs on his hands. His hair was cut very short, and he looked extremely haggard. The moment he saw me, his eyes showed complex emotions. The first thing he asked me was, How is Emma? She's fine. She can already say some simple sentences. I put the divorce application aside for the moment. He took a look at it and then looked away. After a long time, he said, Jacqueline. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Believe me, I've always only loved you. With her, it was just out of pity. You know I'm a sentimental person. I was just bewitched. The 7-foot-tall man hung his head and cried, but I couldn't feel anything in my heart. I got up and left because I wasn't interested in what he said next. Yehuda and Malcolm were both sent to prison. But Vivian's company grew bigger and bigger. I officially joined the company and got shares. Everything was getting better. But then a shocking hot topic suddenly broke out on the internet. Teacher Max was reported for sexually harassing male students. XX Cultural Company was investigated. And his wife suddenly fell seriously ill and was hospitalized. Vivian and I were shocked and rushed to the hospital. Only to see Grace sitting on the bed playing Candy Crush. When she saw us, she immediately smiled. Don't worry. I'm not sick. I'm just hiding from the noise. I was a bit stunned because I had never seen Grace like this before. Grace was gentle. But there was always a hint of melancholy between her brows. This melancholy made her seem both delicate and mysteriously resolute, making people trust her unconsciously. Among the three of us, she was the gentlest, the backbone, and the most reliable person. At this time, she was sitting on the bed, her fair skin almost transparent, her smile still gentle and powerful. But the melancholy between her brows was completely gone. She was like a warm sun. That bastard Max. I'm going to kill him. Vivian waved her fist angrily. I smiled. You? He's already on the verge of death. Grace. When did you know? Grace smiled and held my hand. You're smarter. I knew it a long time ago. Since we got married. It's been more than 5 years. Vivian was shocked again. Then why didn't you act earlier? Grace just smiled without answering. But I understood. The education-oriented family values their good reputation. She didn't expose it for so many years not because she was afraid of Max, but because she was concerned about her parents and family. Vivian figured it out herself and asked tentatively. Was this news? Explode by you? Grace nodded. The three of them are in this together. There's no reason for two brothers to suffer while he enjoys himself alone without loyalty. Vivian chuckled. That's right. Whether they're inside or outside, they should live up to their oath of brotherhood. Share we all and woe. I held her hand back. Grace, petting so still mind Sasha. You did the right thing. Grace smiled. Actually, I should thank you too. You gave me the courage. What the hell are we thanking each other for among sisters? Vivian hugged us both. And the three of us burst out laughing. The autumn sky and water merged into one color. And the wind and moon were clear. The 330p. Afternoon tea was still going on. The three women were still chatting about life's trivia, news gossip, and the new handsome guy in the gym. Everything seemed the same as before. But it was also completely different. The end.